I'm here with Najieb from Why Accountability. Welcome.
Thank you.
It's a Radical Conversation.
Thank you. I'm really happy to be here.
So much like I ask every guest, what radicalized you? What motivates you? What motivated you to really get involved in this work and take it as seriously as you do?
For me, it was an evolution of sorts. My father, we jokingly call him the Haitian sensation, but my father has always been of the mind that no matter how young I was, I needed the exposure to Black radical tradition. So you're talking about a 5-year-old, a 6-year-old, a 7-year-old who's being, as my mother would say, you're dragging my daughter all over New York City doing all kind of mess. But it was not just a bonding experience between father and daughter, it was planting seeds, right? So at the young age of, I was 10, when I really participated in my first march. And that march was, as you know, my father being Haitian and coming from Haiti to the U.S., specifically Brooklyn, and then we planting our roots in the Bronx. He was always big on, you have to be proud of the history of Haiti, the history of independence, the history of resistance, the history of struggles, wars, battles, fought and won, right? For Haiti to have its independence, giving a prime example to Africans all over the world that, number one, it can be done, it has been done, and we won. And that's something that the U.S. miseducation system makes it its business for that information not to be spread. So I was able to get that message. So at the age of 10, I can do what my father preaching FDA, take your AIDS, because they launched a propaganda against Haitian people, Haitian immigrants, as being the bearers of the AIDS crisis in the U.S., specific to New York City. And it was during that march, that was the first time I ever saw my father stand up to the police. Like, my father, who is very calm demeanor, the cop pushed somebody, and I was there. And my father, as calm as I've ever seen him, he turned into a lion. And as a child, I feared for him because even then, I knew, Daddy, that's the police. They could hurt you, they could harm you, they could kill you, so I was scared. But then, my father could hear me, he bossed up to the cop, held his own, and protected me and whoever else the officer had pushed. So from then, I knew that even when you're afraid, you still resist. Even when you have something to lose, you must resist. So that's at the age of 10. Pushing forward, age of 16, my father once again brings me to New Jersey on a case where a young teenage boy was assaulted by the police. During no NYPD and put on no uniform and do that. That was out. So, I said, coming from the background of a child who was in the foster care system, I want to help the kids that look like me, right? So I got a job right out of college. I'm talking about within less than 6 months out of graduating from John Jay, studying forensic psychology, I get a job at ACS, Child Protective Specialist, right? The first introduction really to, I can help within the system, right? So I worked at ACS for about 5 to 6 years, where this is where Shannon and I met and we became friends. So people think that the movement brought us together in friendship. It did not. We had already established a friendship before that. And I went from working at ACS to eventually saying, oh, I want to utilize my degree to help people on the other side, and joining parole. So I became a parole officer. Now, in my mind back then, my attitude was, I'm not a cop. I'm not wearing a uniform. I'm not arresting people, right?
Yeah.
Meanwhile, once you join parole, you learn, yeah, you are arresting people at points in time because they're a part of the industrial complex.
Yeah.
It's a part of the carceral system,
Yeah.
right? So I'm in it, I'm doing the work, and I'm becoming molded by the system per se. I still held my revolutionary beliefs, but once again, thinking that you could fix it from the inside, right?
Yeah.
And then, obviously, I'm able to help my family members out. The income help me take care of myself, my family members, and pursue other things, you know? So, of course, you become wedded to the system in a sense.
Yeah.
And then we have our partner. That shook up everything for me. And to me, it was clear cut. Ramsey order, that video that he provided to the world really was a spotlight. One of many. I don't want to forget, you know, our people who were lost before that.
Yeah.
But it was really a blatant thing.
Yeah.
To watch a black man be jumped on, physically brought down, and piled on. And then scream for his humanity. It be ignored. And then, oh, that wasn't a chokehold. Like our eyes ain't see what we just saw in the video.
Exactly.
As you say, playing in black people's face. And I remember being at work, and obviously this is a discussion, and all the black and brown parole officers, for the most part, the attitude was, nah, this is some BS. And then being told, well, it wasn't a chokehold, it was a this, renaming it, right? As if the end result wasn't his death.
Yeah.
What are we gonna do, right? So as usual, Shannon and I are talking. She had why accountability started with, I want to say about 16 people who said they were going to come together and talk, and what are we going to do about Eric Garner? What are we going to do about the over-policing, the broken windows policing in our community? And it pretty much, when it came time for showtime, it whittled down to a handful and a half worth of people. So I'm a core member and core organizer of the group. But I wasn't there at the direct beginning, but I wasn't too far behind. So we understood that the precinct community council meetings, which are supposed to take place in the community, be run by the community, with the police that provide in the community to discuss any disputes or any issues of the community, what happened in each precinct. So the precinct in which I lived in, Shannon called me and was like, we're actually going to be in your neighborhood. And I said, I'm coming. So when I came, I watched, and it was really a propaganda machine. As some people would say, they would call it propaganda, right? Because what you noticed the NYPD was doing was, it was almost like they were handpicking the members of the community that they wanted there. It was always done in either a precinct or a precinct adjacent, which didn't make it community friendly, because if you've had negative interactions with the police, you can also walk into a precinct in order to express your displeasure, your anger, your sadness, right? That's not a neutral meeting ground. So what we did by attending is, we said, okay, it's time to make a list of demands. And we worked on that. And we worked in coalition with people like Jose LaSalle from Cop Watch Patrol Unit, which is where, shout out to Jose, which is who, I was just like, this man is doing this by himself?
Shit.
Like what? So eventually, you know, by accountability, we held onto the principles of Black radical tradition. And in doing that, we were ostracized by members within the movement. We were ostracized by other Black and brown people outside the movement. We've been targeted because of that.
Yeah.
Me personally, and the group, and we still held on. We were still holding on. Slanders things about me, and that's why I appreciate people within the movement, because they recognized it for what it was, and they critiqued it. And what those individuals did was they, what do you call it, throw a rock and hide your hands.
Yep.
So what they did truly was outed us to white movement, white leftists who have never worked with us, have never lived in the Bronx, have never put in any real work on the ground, continue not to put in work on the ground, to come in and threaten and attack us. Why accountability is a core, hardcore organization that puts in a lot of work, the work that most of them do not want to do.
Yep.
And when they did that, it affected our GoFundMe that we use in order to support the community, support our Swipe It Forward campaigns, and a lot of work that we do is not broadcast on social media. And that's what we're forced to do, right? Black people can't even sit back and broadcast the wins. We can't broadcast our wins.
Nope.
Because when we start broadcasting our wins, then it gets attacked.
Yep.
So we can't even do that. So what they did was purposefully undermine us and cause us to suffer funding-wise. Why? Because we don't take money from grants. Why come we don't do that? Our money comes from the communities we serve and those who wish to contribute. We don't take money from FOP. Even at my job, I'm not a member of the FOP. And they have asked me to be a member of the FOP. And based on my political ideology regarding Assata Shakur, I've refused membership of FOP. So you think that doesn't put me at risk in some sense? I could easily walk away from this whole situation, especially after what they did, and say, F this, I don't got time for that. I gotta get my money. I need to get, but my principles wouldn't allow me to do that, and it still won't. That website remains up.
Yep.
I don't know if you call it names here.
Oh, you could.
Oh, okay.
I want you to.
Nabil Hussein and Vienna Rye.
Mm-hmm. Call them all out.
Nabil Hussein, Vienna Rye, and some minion that they have working for them by the name of Farah have all, and these are brown people, right?
And Gozi as well.
And Gozi as well, black woman. They sat back and conspired against our organization instead of asking to meet with us to discuss.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
We're easily accessible. Everybody knows us. We have a website, we have email, we have phones. I think Nabil called one time. Myself and Shannon spoke to him, and he claimed, oh, I didn't know that you were a parole officer. How is it that everybody knew and you, one person, didn't know? One, you weren't listening. And two, you want to bullshit me to my face, right?
Yep.
Because the home that Vienna was living in is a home that I frequented often because I was providing birth work to one of the other organizers, Arminta Jeffries, right? And Vienna was living in Arminta Jeffries' mother's home. So not only was I working as a parole officer, but I was also in the process of transitioning out of doing that by meeting another need of our community and being a part of as a birth worker. I've since enrolled in school to possibly become a nurse midwife. But in any system that we enter, there's always going to be a gatekeeping thing going on. So even as I speak and prepare for this, I'm encountering issues with becoming a midwife, and there's a whole big push to get black and brown and indigenous midwives into the birth work increased. So when Nabil Hussein set up a website that clicks a snitch site that says resume, and when you click it, it's all about me, my full government name, my nickname, my social media handles, you're snitching to the state.
Right.
on a different type of level.
All right.
Yeah.
Because you know what? Not to cut you off, it's like a lot of people don't understand that doxing is dangerous.
Correct.
And for those political education experts out there, those bookhead ass niggas out there that know dates and everything, look up Darren Seals.
Correct.
If you need an example of why doxing people is dangerous, just Google Darren Seals and look up his comrades in Ferguson, and you'll see why.
Correct. And this is how I know they don't have any connection to community. Where I could easily give up and just say, I ain't gotta worry about nothing that y'all doing. Let me just make my bread and go about my business, retire, and get fat off the land, right? Sacrifice days of work to go to court hearings. Sacrifice time and leave to be where they could not be. Because even though I work for the state, I know that I'm in a privileged position to be able to forfeit time. But that's my sacrifice to the movement. To be in places where other people could not be in order to gather the information so that when we speak to the people, when we speak in media, we're exact and correct about some of the things that took place in those trials. Because you still have the media, you know, corporate controlled media putting out falsehoods. The present day, people are still saying that Eric Garner was selling cigarettes.
Sad.
Well, one, he wasn't, and
No.
two, that was also established in the court proceedings that he was not, right? Situations such as Wayne Isaacs, NYPD officer who shot and killed Delron Small. Sacrificed my time, days off. Was investigated by my agency, where they pulled out pictures of me participating in court proceedings, right? So imagine when you go to work, you're investigated, and when they open up the folder, there's a picture of you and Akai Gurley's family at court. There's a picture of you going, passing behind the family for Delron Smalls. So for people to have the nerve and the audacity to try to throw a rock at me, when I do this because I love my people. I don't do this to get grant money. I don't do this to write a book. I don't do this to be on Inside Edition. I don't do this to flip this over into something else. I do this for the love of black people, African people, oppressed, working class people everywhere. And I have chosen to transition out of it. Other people, in seeing what was done to me, will say, I ain't dealing with that. Yep. If that's the type of people that are in the movement, yep, I'll pass. Because you're no different than the people who are up top oppressing us.
Exactly.
So in my opinion, Vienna Rai, Nabil Hussein, and Ngozi Farah, they're enemies of the people. They're enemies of black people. Yep. They're enemies of black radical tradition. They have none. They place my family at risk, because where I am, my family always is. They didn't care about that. They didn't care if a cop shot another black woman, or the kids that are in her family, or her elder father that she assists in caring for. They didn't care about that. They said because they had a personal axe to grind, and these black women are getting too mouthy, these black women are doing too much, these black women are doing the work that they refuse to do, we're gonna smash that.
Yep.
And that's what they've attempted to do. Because we're still in this thing. Yep. We're still swiping it forward. We're still raising the competency of the political education in our communities. We're still doing it. Something that Y Accountability has always pushed is that black people, black organizations cannot be afraid to say this is a black-only space in which we organize, in which we do what we do, and we do not need anybody who is not black within these spaces. You'll get, oh, what are they doing? You know, how you can't, no. Because why would you want to be in a space, especially as a non-black person, to dominate over us? Why? What is the need for that type of, that's surveillance. And the people who have done what they did, I can only imagine if you can set up a whole website outing people, what other intelligence have you gathered and made your website private so that only people with the link to it have access to read all your, what, intelligence gathering?
That's some fed shit.
Yeah.
That's some fed shit.
So it's crazy that Jim's like, I'm a home parole officer. We know what parole does, and I don't interrupt, and I also do not interrupt people who have chosen to address parole, the function of parole in our communities. I don't interrupt their ability to do that, because that would be moving in disunity, right? I don't allow my current employment to make me starry-eyed to my agency or any other agency within the carceral system. That's doing a disservice to the movement. So people need to think about that. People really need to think about that. And like I said, these people, they're enemies of the people. So we came up with this in order for people to learn how to move what happens in their home, how to film and document in their home, and to protect your social media, because we're being always under surveillance. We're overly surveilled, and anything that we've ever done is eventually used against us in order to demonize us, incarcerate us, and oppress us. So how to move on social media, how to move in your conversations with members of your community. There were members who, even in the Eastchester Gardens raid, which they like to brag about it being the biggest one ever in NYPD history, that there were members who were arrested, and the only thing they ever did was take photos with people. Maybe texted something, and then they were just labeled, branded, and dragged out of their homes at the crack of dawn, and their families, had to deal with that. So one of the people who died during the raids is Giovanni Martin. So when we made this, and he gets lost in the conversation. So when we talk about saying their names, it was really important for us to put Giovanni Martin's name on this raid flyer in memory of him. And these are just some of the few things that we've done in order to raise the competency of our communities. Let them know what's happening. When we're in spaces that they're either gatekeeped out of or made to feel uncomfortable because of it being surrounded by police. The NYPD has a $10 billion budget and they're militarized. So we don't blame folks who don't want to go into those spaces. We'll go into those spaces for you, gather the information, and share it amongst you. And that's really what the most important part of being a member of Y Accountability. Being unafraid to gather and give and share, honestly.
Thank you. Thank you, Najieb.
Thank you.
So much. Thank you so much for coming up here and to get everything off your chest.
Yeah, child. And my chest got a lot on it.
Yes.
And if anybody would like to fund my nursing midwifery education, and you're not tied to some bullshit, hit us up on social media. Okay? info@yaccountability.com. Hey.
Drop the bag.
Drop the bag. If you want to make a statement without saying a word, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you want to, if you want to really talk about transformative justice, if you really want to talk about how can we provide other, employment opportunities for Black and brown people, right? Right? So that they don't have to take jobs at parole. So they don't have to take jobs at NYPD. So they don't have to take jobs at ACS. so they don't have to take jobs within systems that oppress us, right? So talk is cheap.
Yep.
Provide the opportunity and watch people and take